As most of you know, Jim helps leaders grow companies, and before he started the Inc. CEO project, he ran a technology business valued at $1.8 billion. He's done business in 27 countries, 5 of which I can pronounce, which is a thing in and of itself. You guys all have copies of Jim's best-selling book, Why Great CEOs Are Lazy, which isn't necessarily a negative, but more amazing insight that I've gotten from it. Now, Jim is an engineer. He's an avid soccer player. He's a level 1 sommelier, and he recently climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. So a warm welcome for my good friend, Jim Schleckser.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate it. Ian's right. I do play soccer, and I do drink wine, and I do climb mountains. I just try not to do them all on the same day. Except on Saturday, that's my day off. I do what I want on Saturdays. I am an engineer, too, and I want to let you know there's no cure, but I am in remission, so that's all right. But there will be charts, graphs, and calculus involved today, so be ready. You ready? No, I haven't used calculus since the day I left college, and today will be no different. But what I do is I talk to CEOs all the time. And across the course of about a dozen years of working with CEOs, I've spoken with thousands of CEOs. And what I found is that they really fall into 2 camps. There's one camp that's working hard. They're engaged in their business. They're working 80 hours a week. They're going to meetings. They're making stuff happen. And they're not getting the results that they'd like in their business. Kind of frustrating. There's another camp. They seem to be in complete control of their responsibilities. They go to meetings, but they also have time to do what they want to. They probably work 40 or 50 hours a week, and they get great results. These lazy CEOs are doing the same job these guys are. And yet they get amazingly different results with different kinds of time commitment. So I asked myself, what's the difference between these guys and these lazy CEOs? I like to water my garden when I'm at home, and so I'll take the hose and I'll drag it across the yard, and I'll begin to water my and move from here to here, and eventually what happens is the water stops flowing. Well, we all know what happened. There's a kink in the hose. So I've got a technique. What I do is I grab the hose and I move it up and down and left and right, and I move it all over, and it almost never removes the kink. It almost never pulls it out. Now my neighbor pokes his head over the fence and says, "No, Jim, there's another way." He said, "Just follow the hose down the length, find the kink, and unkink it. It's easier. And if there's another kink, you just continue to follow the hose, and you unkink that one." And you know what? That is exactly the difference between how I used to do the CEO job and how these lazy CEOs do it. I'm working like crazy trying to unkink the hose, and I'm having no results. And these lazy CEOs have a different technique of following the hose and unkinking it. Now look, we cause this problem. I have an MBA. We cause this problem. When you go to MBA school, what they teach you is you have stakeholders. The government's a stakeholder, your employees are stakeholders, your suppliers are stakeholders, your customers, your shareholders, all stakeholders. And you're supposed to take care of them. That's our job as CEOs. We got this. We take our time and like peanut butter on a bagel, we smear our time nice and even across the entire business, which ensures that we're never going to get anything interesting done in the business. In fact, there's a guy by the name of Eli Goldratt. He's passed away, but Eli was an Israeli physicist. And Eli talked about this. He had a model called theory of constraints. The theory of constraint basically says, in any system you can name, there's a kink. He called it a constraint. And he said, work that you do that is not at the point of constraint is a waste. It's useless. It does no good. Only work at the point of constraint, at the kink, is useful in opening up the capacity of the system. So we had my example of the garden hose, and I was flailing like crazy and doing all kinds of work, and I wasn't opening up the kink. Useless. You might ask yourself the question, is there a kink in your business? A kink that stops you from delivering the profit you'd like to. A kink that stops you from growing your revenue the way you'd like to. A kink that stops you from serving customers the way you'd like to. Bob mentioned that I climbed Kilimanjaro, and I did that about a year ago with a bunch of friends. We had 5 of us on this trip. It was a great experience. One of us was a triathlete, a competitive triathlete. Another of us was a master yoga instructor. The third had prepared extensively for the trip, taking hikes with backpacks, completely ready for the trip. There was myself, and I was going to take a lot more steps to get to the top of that mountain than anybody else. But our 5th member, we nicknamed him Baby Bear. Now, Baby Bear was in shape, as long as round is a shape. In fact, his primary concern, you're not allowed to drink on the mountain, his primary concern was, how am I going to make it 9 days without a cocktail while we climb this thing? Well, our goal was to have a great time. Our goal was to have an amazing time. We took a longer trek, and we got a great outfitter. Now, we showed up at base camp, and for 5 of us, there were 35 porters. This was luxurious camping. So what we did every day is we woke up in our tents, and they brought us our coffee, went to breakfast, we'd eat our breakfast, we put our very light day packs on, and we begin our hike. And we hiked to the next camp, which was already set up when we got there. Tea was being served, of course. This is all very civilized. And we began to tell stories and jokes the rest of the day. Now, Baby Bear had the greatest stories and the greatest jokes. He was a blast to have on the trip. Would have been no fun without him. Well, every day we carried on. We'd wake up in the morning, we'd drink our coffee, we'd take our little hike, we'd have afternoon tea, we'd tell our jokes, and we'd have a great time. Finally, high base camp, we're ready to summit. We're at 15,500 feet, and we're going to go to the summit of Kilimanjaro. We all come out of our tents in our down jackets, ready to go. Baby Bear comes out looking like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Ready to go. So we begin our climb, slowly to the top. And let me repeat, slowly to the top. Well, step by step, we got ourselves to the top of Kilimanjaro, 19,134 feet, together as a team, and we had a great time. It was a blast. Now, our goal was to have a great time. And in that, Baby Bear was an amazing asset to the trip. Had our goal been to get to the top of the mountain as quickly as we could, we would have had to kill him and eat him. And Baby Bear's here in the audience, by the way, so thank you for being a good sport. So the first question you got to ask yourself as a CEO is, how do I find the kink in the hose? It was easy with my example of the garden hose. We just followed along till we find the kink and we unkink it. But we got to find the kink in the hose. But before we do that, we need to know our objective. No objective, no kink. Different objective, different kink. And so you got to get crystal clear on what your objective is to find the kink in the hose. And that's actually the first thing. What's your objective? And what's your kink? So, but then you have to find the kink in the hose. I talked about a garden hose. That's easy. Your businesses are obviously more complex. Well, there's 2 ways to find a kink in the hose. And the first is with your analyst hat. So when you have your analyst hat on, you are in analyst mode. Looking at data, looking at spreadsheets, learning, reading books, going to sessions like this to increase your knowledge. You're trying to find the kink. Billy Beane was the general manager of the Oakland Athletics. This is baseball, for those of you who don't know baseball. And it's a famous story, Moneyball. Moneyball is written by Michael Lewis. It talks about the whole story. It was ultimately a movie starring Brad Pitt, who, by the way, is going to play me in the movie, just Brad Pitt. What Billy Beane inherited was a baseball team that had a $40 million payroll. He's in a smaller market. He didn't have a big payroll. And this was in the time when the New York Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers had payrolls of $120 million. They had 3 times the payroll that Billy Beane did. So he went into analyst mode. He said, this is a giant problem. What's the objective? I want to win as many games as I can and ultimately win the World Series. But I had a kink, which is the payroll. So he got together with a guy named Paul DePodesta, who's a Harvard-educated analyst, and they began to look at how can we configure the team? Can we do it this way, that way, this way? And what everybody else in the market was doing at that time was they were finding exactly the same kind of players. Big guys, 6'2", broad shoulders, body for baseball. Funny enough, face for baseball. They have to look like a baseball player for us to want them. They can hit the ball, hit home runs, and they can throw the ball 99 miles an hour. Those guys were bid out of sight. Billy Beane couldn't afford anybody like that, so he had to build a team that could win without any of those kind of people. That was his kink in the hose. How do I build a team with a $140 million payroll and beat these guys that have a $120 million payroll all day long? So he had found the kink, but he didn't have a solution yet. One objective, one kink, 2 ways to find it. The other way to find it is player mode. Put your player hat on and go into player mode. And player mode is when you're engaged in the business. For those of you that are entrepreneurs, this is your favorite hat, right? An analyst, spreadsheets, sitting in my office, no fun. This is the fun hat. We're going to get in there. We're going to make some sales. We're going to make things happen. This is your fun hat. Let me tell you a story about 2 CEOs that we work with, Marty, who's here, and Dave, who is actually not here. Now, they both run manufacturing companies, and they had a problem. And their problem was that they had more orders than they could handle. Their operation couldn't keep up with it. And the implication here is revenue just being left on the table. People wanted my product, and I couldn't deliver it. On-time deliveries are dropping like a rock. Customers are unhappy. This is a huge problem. Marty runs a business down in Georgia. Dave runs a business up in Canada. Same exact problem in these manufacturing companies. They both went into player mode. They got involved in the operation, went to operations meetings, talked to people on the floor, looked at what was occurring, followed product through the manufacturing process to understand the kink in the hose. And what they found was it wasn't the people. The people were great. They wanted to do a great job. It was the system that they had wrapped around them to let them be successful. So they had found the kink, but they hadn't yet deployed the solution. Now, what you realize by now, Marty and Dave are in very similar businesses. In fact, Marty makes firearms, and Dave makes cupcakes. Same kink. Doesn't matter what industry it is. You have the same kink, you go into player mode or you go into analyst. And as I said, some of you love the player hat, but you do well to put the analyst hat on sometimes. They are different views of the same problem. So once you find the kink with analyst or player, it's time to fix the kink. Yeah, no problem. Sorry. There we go. You see it? Once you find the kink, we've got to go fix the kink. So one objective, one kink, 2 ways to find it. There are 3 ways to fix the kink. The first one of my favorite hats, is the engineer hat. So the engineer hat is about processes and systems. This is how we do what we do. And there are 3 things that sit inside the engineer hat. One is your IT systems, which you all know about. That's normally what people think about when we talk about processes and systems. The other, though, is your standard operating procedures, the written procedures of how we do things, as well as the unwritten ones. And the last is your values that you use to run your business. So I like to stay at the Ritz-Carlton, one of my favorite hotels. And not that long ago, I drove up to a Ritz-Carlton, and they met my car, popped my trunk, and had my luggage out before I got around to the back of the car. They said, "Hello, Mr. Schleckser, welcome to the Ritz-Carlton." I'm like, cool. That's how I should be greeted. We walked to the front desk, and the woman behind the desk said, "Welcome back to the Ritz-Carlton, Mr. Schleckser. It's been a little while since you've been here. We're glad to have you." I was feeling like Brad Pitt at this moment. I was being treated the way I am supposed to be treated. She said, "We notice that you prefer feather pillows, and you'd rather have an apple in the evening instead of chocolate." I go, "Why, actually, that's true." She said, "We've got that all arranged. Don't worry about it. Got you covered." I went to my room. Everything is exactly as she described. The next morning, I'm trying to find the gym, and I'm a little bit lost, and I found a housekeeper. And I said, "Look, I'm trying to find the gym." She said, "Don't worry, I've got you covered." She wheeled her dolly into the closet, closed it, and walked me to the gym. Amazing experience. But let's deconstruct that a little bit. What the Ritz-Carlton has done is they have engineered that experience so I had that Brad Pitt moment while I was there. When I met the fellow with the car, they have been trained, standard operating procedure, to take the bag out and look at the bag tag. That's how he met me by name. How could he have known I was coming any other way? He looked at my bag tag. "Hello, Mr. Schleckser, welcome to the Ritz-Carlton." Now, what's cool about that, and I didn't notice this till later, is in his sleeve, he had some technology. He had a microphone hooked up to a walkie-talkie. So when he said, "Hello, Mr. Schleckser, welcome to the Ritz-Carlton," who was he talking to? The woman at the front desk. So when I walked up, "Hello, Mr. Schleckser, welcome to the Ritz-Carlton." She had already pulled up my reservation, seen that I hadn't been there for a year, so she was able to say, "We noticed you haven't been here for a while, welcome back." They've used technology to help build that experience. In my reservation notes, it also says feather pillows and apple instead of chocolate. So she acknowledged that, standard operating procedure. And of course, the system is designed to make that happen, and it did. The next morning when I went to the gym, and I asked the housekeeper where the gym is, well, there's no procedure for that. There's no IT system. It's values. And the values at the Ritz-Carlton are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. So when you don't know what to do that. So what did she do? She said, "What would I do if I was a lady or gentleman serving a lady or gentleman?" Well, I would escort him to the gym because that would be the thing to do. So she put away her stuff and brought me to the gym. IT, standard operating procedures, and values all contributing to build an amazing engineered experience. Oh, I should go back. Marty and Dave went in and changed their operating procedures in their manufacturing operations. They created visibility to the schedule. They had the team understand exactly what they need to do every single day to deliver the result that they were after, which is on-time shipments to all of their customers. They put that in place, and what happened? Revenue went up and up and up. High on-time delivery, customers satisfied because they spent the time to go into player mode and find the problem and go into engineer mode and solve the problem. Well, there's another hat that we can use, which is our coach's hat. And the coach's hat is about people. This is about working with people, finding great people, coaching great people, and unfortunately, exiting great people sometimes. These lazy CEOs spend a lot of time thinking about A's, B's, and C players. A players, let's define that for a second. They are people that you could not replace for the money you spend for them right now. If you went to the market, there's no way I could replace this person for this money. That's an A player. If they came to your office and said, "Hey, Jim, I'm leaving," you go, "What would it take for me to cause you to stay here? I will do whatever it takes." That's an A player. And you're probably, as you think about the people on your team, you go, "That one's an A, that one's an A, the others I don't know." A B, I can find somebody to do that job just as well for the same amount of money in the market. So if they came and said they're going to leave, you go, okay, well, that's not very good, but I could probably replace that person for that amount of money. And to C, they come to you and say, hey, Jim, I think I'm going to have to leave. Of course, we give them the standard CEO response, which is, we're so sad you're leaving, we're really going to miss you. Inside, yes, opportunity to upgrade, awesome, thank you. So that's A's, B's, and C's. So on the first side, on hiring, when you want to try to get A's, the first question is, where do I need A players in my organization? And you don't need and you can't afford A players everywhere in your organization. Just a quick round of applause. Who has above average people in their company universally? Over 50% above average. All right, good. You're in great company. The US government recently did a study. The Government Accounting Agency just did Government Accountability Office just did a study, and they analyzed the performance reviews of government employees. And they found out that 82% of them are rated above average. So you are in really good company with the talent you have in your company. Look, let's be honest. On average, your people are average. Particularly as the numbers get bigger, the probability that the average is higher. If I got 10 people, I got a shot that they're above average. I got 1,000 people, odds are they're average. That's okay. We're going to build systems to let average people perform really, really well. So first is, where do I need A players? Now, when you're hiring A players in critical roles, you need to be personally involved. So if you have a sales organization, you probably want A players in your sales organization. What about accounting? Could they be Bs? Nah, sure, fine. What if I got a software programming organization? Where do I want my A's? Probably want to have some pretty killer software programmers in my organization. Might want some killer marketers too, by the way, but again, accounting, let's pick on them. Meh, B's okay, right? What if I was running a very, very cost-sensitive organization where every penny mattered? Low margin, high turnover, payables mattered. How about accounting? Do I want A's or B's in there? I want A's in there. Get the picture? Got to decide where you want your A's. You need to be personally involved in hiring these A's, though. People at that level come because of you. They become your vision, your insight, your enthusiasm, where you want to bring the company because they think they can learn something from you. So you have to be involved. Talent, too important to delegate to HR. Talent is too important to delegate to HR. Well, once they get in place, there's obviously the coaching experience. Are you focused on the right thing? Can I help clear a roadblock for you? Our goal here is to be servants to our people, to make them be successful. This is what lazy CEOs do. The more successful I can make the people, the less work I got to do. It's an easy formula. So your goal is to make their jobs easy and effective. And the more time you spend on that, the less time you have to work. So clearing roadblocks and making them successful. The other element, though, is when they're not being successful, you might want to move them to a different job. Do I have to train them, move them to a different job, or, in the ultimate case, ask them to leave the organization? Now, let's talk about that for a second, because that's always hard. Who's fired people? Yeah, everybody. A lot of fun, right? Yeah. No, it's horrible. It's like we feel like failures when somebody has to leave our organization. I just want to reframe that for a second for you. Every person has an organization where they can be successful, hugely successful. But sometimes it's not your organization. And the sooner you figure that out and let them go find the place where they can be successful, the better off you and they both are. And actually, it's a blessing to help them get to where they're going to be successful rather than keep them here where they're going to suffer, never get a raise, never get a promotion, not get loved on. The sooner you help them find that new place, the better off everything is. So reframe that. You're helping them find a new place. The other element, though, is when you delay. Let me ask that question. Who's delayed in hiring somebody they know they should? Yeah, Tito. Yeah, right. Who's delayed in getting rid of somebody they knew they should have gotten rid of? If every hand doesn't go up here, you're just liars, right? I mean, we all do it. Here's the problem. Your team is looking at you to do the right thing. And if you hang on to somebody that everybody knows is a non-performer, well, the first day, that's okay. The second day, that's okay. The fifth day, they begin to look at you. The 180th day, they're starting to ask real questions about your leadership. The 360th day, they go, does he even know what's going on in this company? What is he thinking? I mean, he must not be very good if he doesn't know that he's horrible. So you need to make the move because you begin to expend personal political capital to keep that person in the organization once you know they're not performing. So you need to make the move for those reasons. So the coach hat is about finding great talent, coaching the ones you have, and getting rid of the ones that don't work. Let's go back to Billy Beane. Billy Beane came up with a talent strategy. He said, I can't beat them hiring those good-looking big guys, 99 miles an hour. So what I'm going to go for are people that do two things better than anybody else. They get on base, and they don't get out. It sounds really simple, but they get on base, and they don't get out. And I don't care how they get on base, and I don't care what they look like. So the classic guy, the one that he was in love with, was a guy named Kevin Youkilis. Kevin was a big gangly guy, didn't look like a baseball player at all, but Kevin had one characteristic that made him unique. He got walked more than anybody else in Major League Baseball. He couldn't hit the ball for a beans, but he got walked like crazy. So he got on base. And you know what? He was a pretty good base runner, so he didn't get out. This was the ideal guy for him. So he took pudgy guys, gangly guys who got on base and didn't get out. And he brought that team to its two record years, 2002, 2003. They made it to the playoffs. They had a 20-game winning series, and they got knocked out in the playoffs ultimately. Very successful, this model, with a talent strategy once he figured out the problem. There's a guy named Theo Epstein who was a disciple of his. Anybody know who Theo is? You will, right? Yeah, you will too, yeah. Theo Epstein learned from Billy Beane, and he ended up going to the Red Sox. The enemy, yeah. He broke the curse. He used this exact technique to build the Red Sox. They won 2 World Series on it. Then he went to the Chicago Cubs, used exactly the same technique, broke the curse there. And they won the World Series because of Theo Epstein, because of Billy Beane, because of the coach hat. And the third hat, what's that? Still, we have a Cleveland Indians fan in the house. I just remember when Ian said, did somebody die? The answer is yes, somebody died. The third hat that you should be thinking about when you're trying to fix the kink in the hose is the architect hat. The architect hat is about your business model. This is what you do for whom, how you do it, the margin we make, the price that we charge. All of those are in the coach's hat. Architect's hat, pardon me. So I used to go to a place where I would, it was named Blockbuster. Anybody remember Blockbuster? It was a while ago. Who's been to a Blockbuster? You're all about the right age. Okay, yep. All right, except for Bo. So I went to Blockbuster, and I would go there to find the movie I was supposed to get. They never had it. They never had the movie I was supposed to get, and so I'd have to wander through the romantic comedies. Couldn't find Meg Ryan, but I could find Brad Pitt, so I'd get that movie. I'd grab the Brad Pitt movie, I'd go rent it, I'd head home on a Friday night. We'd get busy. We'd fail to watch it. And the next Friday, when I started thinking about movies again, I go, oh, I gotta return the movie. So I'd return the movie, and I'd pay, $37 in late fees, I think, yeah. And hadn't seen the movie, by the way, but I'd returned it $37 later and said, man, this is just not a great experience. Another place opened up very close to my house, Hollywood. Hollywood was better, more selection, brighter, bigger. So I started going to Hollywood. It was like 5 or 10% better. I go to Hollywood looking for they had the movie a little bit more often, but I found myself not getting the movie I wanted and paying late fees more often than I liked to. And they began to have this little war. A little bigger store, a little brighter store, a little more inventory. A little bigger store, a little brighter, a little more inventory. And what happened to them? Somebody architected a better answer. Netflix came in, and they said, look, no store, no driving, no late fees. Rent whatever you want. We've got a bajillion movies in our inventory. Just make a list of what you want. We'll send them when they're available. When you're done, you just send it back, $10 a month. This was not 5 or 10% better. This was twice as good. Twice as good. In fact, what they had crafted is what we call a mafia offer. It is so good, you can't refuse. We're going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Netflix made that offer to me. They made me an offer so good I couldn't refuse. How many times did I go back to Blockbuster? 0. Hollywood, 0, done. 3 years, Blockbuster, out of business. With better architecture, a better business model. And the key thing that they did better than everybody else was they crafted a mafia offer. They made it so good, you can't say no. So how many of you think you have a mafia offer in your business right now? Nobody willing to say yes. One? Okay, yeah, okay, 2, okay, couple. The more time you spend on creating a mafia offer, the better off you're gonna be. The better off you're gonna be. And until you have it, you really should invest the time to get it. And then you won't need guys like Ian to tell you how to sell. You still need Ian, but mafia offer is a big, and these lazy CEOs get this. Better business model, better mafia offer, the easier my life is. Now, the other interesting thing about Netflix is recurring revenue. So Netflix hits my credit card. It's an opt-out model, $10 a month. I'm never going to cancel the thing. I've probably been paying for Netflix for ever, right? 15 years, when they come into business. I've been paying forever. I've never stopped. They have recurring revenue like crazy. When they come out of last year, January 1st, they look forward, they probably know where 95% of their revenue is coming from. Meaning I just take last year's number, multiply it by 95%, that's the beginning number for the following year. Well, how easy is it to grow a business like that? Cake, right? I got one business that's got 100% recurring revenue, just for easy math, and one that's got 0. This business says, I got last year's number locked. This one goes, I've got to do a huge amount of work, a huge amount of selling, just to get back to last year's number, and then I get to grow. So the more recurring revenue you have in your business, the lazier you can be. Now, quick round of applause. Who has over 50% recurring revenue in their business? Who has over 50%? Yeah. Okay, everybody who didn't clap, those people all sleep at night way better than you do. The other interesting thing about recurring revenue is valuation. So Netflix has essentially 100% recurring revenue, may even be over 100%. Let's compare two companies. Ford Motor Company has $100 billion in revenue. The market cap of Ford Motor Company, the last time I looked, was about $60 billion. They get 6 cents on every dollar of revenue. And they have almost no recurrence in it because almost all of that goes to the dealers, right? 60 cents on every dollar. Netflix has about $12 billion in revenue. The recent market capitalization of Netflix, $72 billion. 60 cents on the dollar, $6 on the dollar. Why? Recurring revenue. Now you could say, hey Jim, those are different businesses. This one's got a better margin, and fair enough. Let me just tell you, two identical businesses, this one with no recurring revenue and this one with recurring revenue, that'll be valued at 2 to 3 times higher. Why? Anybody know why? It's a snarky answer. Because the 26-year-old snot-nosed MBA analyst is going to be able to do a spreadsheet. That's actually the reason. But so the children can do a spreadsheet, and it's easy for them, and that's why they like it. But investors like predictability. Recurring revenue gives them predictability. So if you don't have high degree of recurring revenue in your business, mafia offer and recurring revenue are the two things to spend time on as an architect. So, one kink, one objective. 2 ways to find it, 3 ways to fix it. Engineer, coach, and architect. A lot of times we run into CEOs and they go, I get that, Jim, but I am already working 80 hours a week. How am I going to find the time to do all this stuff? I don't have any time. Because I tell them that the lazy CEOs spend 30 to 40% of their time in one of those modes. 30 to 40% of their time in one of those modes. And when you're already working 80 hours a week, how are you ever going to spend that kind of time in one of those modes? So we have an answer. It's not that complex, but we make a list, a to-do list. Everything you are working on, rank order of economic impact. The strongest economic impact at the top, the weakest economic impact, or 0 at the bottom. First thing you do, you make a line about halfway across, halfway up that list. You're going to work on the stuff above the line, but everything below the line, you're going to do one of 3 Ds. 3 Ds. First is you're going to delegate it. You're going to take one of those items, you're going to find somebody in your organization thrilled one of the responsibilities off the plate from the CEO. And you go, oh, that can't be very exciting. And let me tell you, something that is not worth your time can be a really valuable project for somebody else to learn, develop, and impact. So delegate's number 1. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to defer it. Let's just push it into time. Let's see what happens. You would be amazed at how many of your problems time solves. We have one CEO, Baby Bear, in fact. He decided he wanted to get less email in one company he was working in. And he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a rule that I will not respond to email for 24 hours. 24 hours. And, you know, we're in this hyperkinetic environment where we got to respond right away, and people are if they don't get an answer in 15 minutes, they're calling us and saying, did you get my email? Like, yeah, 15 minutes ago, what do you want me to do, right? He would wait 24 hours and see if time solved the problem. His email dropped by 60% over the course of a couple of months when people understood that he was not going to respond in 15 minutes and he was going to let them solve the problem. So time solves a lot of issues. So defer is a valid strategy. And the last one is don't do. You are never going to do anything about it. Put a red line through it. It comes off the list. We're not doing it. So make a list, line halfway across, delegate, defer, or don't do. You do that through 2 cycles across a couple of months. You'll have the time to spend 30% of your time in one of the high leverage roles. So I have a friend who worked with a company in Oxford, Maryland. It's a restaurant by the name of the Robert Morris Inn. Now, the Robert Morris Inn was founded by Robert Morris. Robert Morris was BFFs with George Washington. He helped finance the Revolution. This was kind of a cool guy in his time. He founded the town that the inn is in. This is a big kind guy. A lot of history around him. Well, the inn had fallen kind of into disrepair, and people weren't going there the way they used to. They had good food, but the experience wasn't what they wanted. Well, my friend's kind of an expert in restaurants, so he agreed to help out and fix the problem. Put on his analyst hat, looked at their spreadsheets, looked at their point of sale, looked at all of the trends, looked at competitive menus, analyzed pricing. Then he went into player mode. He worked in the kitchen, worked as a waiter. He was a client. He went through a dining experience to see how that was. And through that, what he figured out is that they had a kink in the hose, which is they were not taking advantage of their primary differentiator, which is their history. It's a super cool place, and it was like they were normal, like it was a Denny's. So nobody was going back. There was no experience to be had. He said, so we're going to change the model. And the first thing he went after was, with his engineer hat, he said, we're going to change the system. When people come to the Robert Morris Inn, we're going to greet them and say, welcome to the Robert Morris Inn. We've been in business since 1710. It's the oldest continuous operating inn in the United States. Welcome here. We're going to have a great time. As they would walk them to the table, they would tell them about Robert Morris, how he was BFFs with George Washington, how he financed the Revolution, how he founded the town, and he built this house. And now you're lucky enough to dine at the Robert Morris Inn. He also asked people to wear uniforms. Period uniforms, sort of like Williamsburg. He wanted to feel like people were at transport them in time to the Robert Morris Inn. Well, you know what some people said? I ain't wearing the uniform. Put his coach's hat on. He said, well, there's a problem with that because the people that work here wear the uniform. So if you don't want to wear the uniform, you don't work here anymore. So he cleared those people out, and he found people that were enthusiastic about the history. Some of them were history geeks. They loved the history of the Robert Morris, and they were thrilled to be working there. He fixed the systems. He fixed the people. And what happened? Revenue began to go up and up and up. People told their friends about what a cool experience it was, and they began to come back time and time again. Well, there's another place he could go, which he hasn't gone yet, which is to put on his architect hat. Now, there's nothing wrong in the Robert Morris Inn. It's running great. So when everything's running great, it's time to put your architect hat on and figure out what's next. How am I going to make this an even better business than the one I've got right now? So there's always work to be done. There's always another kink in the hose, even if it's not an impediment, but an opportunity. Opportunity one would be, he has an opportunity to build dinner at the Robert Morris Inn, a price-fix menu with price-fix wines. Now, everybody in the restaurant business knows that these are kind of shishi right now, but part of why they are is they are super high margin. So if you went to the dinner at Robert Morris's house, would he hand you a menu? No. Would he hand you a wine list? No. He'd say, welcome to my home, here's dinner, and here's the wine list. That's an opportunity to get high margin, unique experience dinner at Robert Morris Inn. And he hasn't taken advantage of it, but I think he will at some point. There's also an opportunity to build an affinity club, which will build some level of recurrence into their business. So these are things you could do if you put on his architect hat. So you can see my friend went through all the hats, right? He started with analyst. He also went to player. Then he went back and looked at the numbers to make sure it all made sense. He put on his engineer hat, had some implications because of the new systems. Put on his coach's hat because some of the people weren't going to work out. And now that everything's running well, opportunity for the architect hat. So this is how they all work together. At various times, you're going to wear different ones of those hats. So what do we got? One objective, one kink in the hose, 2 ways to find it, 3 hats that you can use to fix it. That's what these lazy CEOs do differently than what I used to do. Flail in the hose all over the place. They have a systematic, organized way to think about their job and to focus their efforts. So if you're wondering, am I working on the right thing like I used to? You're working 80 hours a week, not getting the results you want? You learn something from these lazy CEOs. 1 objective, 1 kink, 2 hats to find it, 3 hats to remove it. So I hope you picked up a couple of ideas as we talked through this. I know some of you have heard the material before, but hopefully a few new ideas came together. And I urge all of you to get busy being lazy. Thank you.